I'm Medea Benjamin, and I'm with the group Code Pink, Women for Peace.
Awesome. So, with your work with Code Pink, I'm really curious about, how we have like organizations that are feminist in the United States, right? But oftentimes that international solidarity and advocacy is lacking. What are some of your observations as far as like how or why that takes place?
Well, in general, I think in the United States, people are so nationalistic, so focused inwards, don't have a chance to travel, don't speak other languages unless you're part of the diaspora of some other country. But the U.S. is so USA that they think, we're the center of the world and you don't have to pay attention to what's happening elsewhere. And let's face it, our education system is not the greatest and doesn't teach us to have not to learn about the world, and doesn't teach us certainly to have a sense of solidarity. And as soon as you learn about the effects of U.S. foreign policy around the world, then you're really feel an obligation to do something to change U.S. policy. And I think these days there's so many connections between what we do abroad and what happens at home. I mean, I live in Washington, D.C. Now we have a militarized city, National Guard in our city, and this is blowback or reflection of the militarization we have around the world. So I think it's very important to care about the world, to see ourselves as global citizens, and to be responsible about what our government is doing, not only at home, but elsewhere. Well, first I should say that Code Pink has always been open to men, to anybody, because we feel like it's important to have a women-led organization, but that we want everybody to be able to become supporters of Code Pink, members of Code Pink. Yeah, I guess at Code Pink we look through, a lot of times through the lens of women, to see what's happening in society in general, because how you treat women reflects what kind of human rights exist, what kind of equality exists, what kind of support there is for the rights of women who tend to earn less money than men earn. So all of those issues are part of how a society is run. And I think in the US, there's this sense that women have achieved total equality with men. And first of all, it's not true, because we still live in a patriarchy. Women still don't make as much money as men. Women still have overwhelmingly are the ones who are the caretakers at home, as well as having to work outside the house to be able to have several incomes to take care of one family. But I think that the way that we fight for women's rights here, we should be fighting for women's rights elsewhere. For example, the kind of sanctions that the U.S. imposes on other countries, whether it's Cuba or Iran or many countries, that really affects women and their ability to feed their children, to take care of their families. When U.S. sanctions are imposed, the unemployment rate goes up, and it's women who are the first ones to be fired. So when you look at the effects of what the U.S. does in the world, looking through women's eyes is very revealing about the impact of those policies.
One thing I'm really curious to hear your personal viewpoint on as a Latino male, right? We have what's referred to as the education gap, right? Where for Latinos at least specifically, the women in my age cohort, so about you'd call that 18 to 20 or 18 to 35 pretty much, are much more educated than the men. However, there's still a pay gap. What kind of things do you think kind of converge and kind of cause that happening, where we have mass incarceration of men but wage suppression of women, even though they are educated?
Yeah, well, let's face it, in Latin America, as in so much of the world, there still is a problem of machismo, still this sense of a man has to take care of the family and so deserves higher pay than the women does. There's still this myth that the women are not heads of household when there are so many women heads of household. So I think even though things have changed in terms of educational opportunities, when you go out into the workplace, the change there is slower. And a lot of that is because the people who own a lot of the businesses, who are in important positions in government, tend to be older. So you don't see yet the reflection of that better education in terms of better pay yet, but it's going to happen, and especially in Latin America, where women are so feisty, women are so strong, women are so inspiring. To see the women's movements throughout Latin America, I think inspire a lot of women in the United States.
Kind of building on the women's movement in Latin America, we now have Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the president of Mexico. What are some of your observations of her service so far as a female president in North America?
Well, I think she's absolutely brilliant. I mean, first of all, let's remember that the Morena party is new and that it sprung up from nowhere. I mean, it was like the Democrats and Republicans in the United States. It switches on and off, never a third party. And all of a sudden, Moreno, I mean, there was the PRD in Mexico, but, that never quite grew very strong. But the Moreno party, to be able to have AMLO become president was a real revolution. And then to be able to turn it over into the hands of such an accomplished woman who was an environmentalist, a scientist, somebody with tremendous vision about how a city can be run, and has taken over and found herself having to confront Donald Trump in this incredibly kind of old-fashioned Monroe Doctrine mentality of, one, we now have the right to invade your country if we want to deal with your drug problem, even though the drug problem, of course, is here in the United States and the people who use the drugs. I love the way she has responded to that. I love the way she's responded to the whole thing of, the Gulf of America versus the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, she maintains her dignity and her ability to represent the people of Mexico, and yet does it in a way that doesn't quite evoke a horrific response from Donald Trump. So it's walking a very fine line. And so I think that so far, knock on wood, she's done a really fantastic job.
And of course, we're here at the People's Conference for Palestine. To shift a little bit, have you been able to have, conversations with women that are in Gaza or in Greater Palestine, just kind of about their their conditions under genocide, but also just their conditions under occupation? And what have some of those conversations been like?
Absolutely heartbreaking is not even nearly strong enough. I've been to Gaza 7 times. I have many friends there, many women friends. I am afraid to even ask them day to day, week to week, how are you doing? Because what are they going to say? They're horrible. The best thing they can say is we're alive. But they live in fear every single day. They are constantly being displaced from one place to another with nothing, and nowhere is safe, and they are now going hungry and having to send out your elder son or your husband in search of food, not knowing will they even come home, will they be shot waiting online for food, is just devastating. I can't believe that we're seeing almost 2 years of what we've seen, and that the world is letting it happen. It is so dystopian, and women are suffering so terribly during all of this. I mean, I think about, women not having the basic hygiene products that they need. I think of women not being able to get showers, not having clean water to drink. If you're pregnant and giving birth under horrific conditions, and then with the stress and the malnutrition, not having enough milk to breastfeed your child, then having Israel keep baby formula out of Gaza, and women watching their children die from hunger. I mean, what could be worse than that?
What do you have to say to, I guess to phrase it in a way, the women in imperialism, such as a Tammy Duckworth, who are very much complicit, if not egging this thing on, the genocide in Gaza?
Well, it's funny you would pick Tammy Duckworth because she's somebody who, lost her legs in a war the U.S. should not have been in. You would think that somebody like her would have tremendous compassion for people who are suffering in a conflict where they're constantly being bombed, they're constantly being sniped. But she takes a lot of money from AIPAC, as do so many of the other people in Congress. On the other hand, I think it's important to recognize that there has been so much counter pressure from the public in people's districts, in their states, that is starting to weigh against the pressure from the pro-Israel lobby groups like AIPAC, the pro-war groups, that even people like Tammy Duckworth are having to do something to be able to face their constituents. So she just had a very good vote on a weapons package to go to Israel, and we were shocked that she voted with Bernie Sanders and 26 other senators. But that is not because Tammy Duckworth has changed her mind and seen the light. It's because she's getting so much pressure from people in Illinois.
Just two more for you.
Yeah.
Some of my coworkers and myself are reading and have read your book, Kingdom of the Unjust, about Saudi Arabia. I want to know, as I'm currently in the process of reading it, it's incredible. I love your writing. Thank you so much for this book. Have you received kind of any blowback from the Saudi government due to this book, or maybe other, I guess, Islamic regime governments?
Well, I tried to get in Saudi Arabia. I was there once, but when I tried to get in again, I couldn't get in. I think, I've had terrible times in other governments in the Middle East. I've been beaten severely by government thugs in Egypt for merely trying to come in with 100 prominent women to go to Gaza. In the case of Saudi Arabia, it is quite interesting. Not only did I do that book, but we have been, in the past, especially in the years after the cutting up and disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi, and then during the time when Saudi Arabia was the principal country involved in the bombing of Yemen and the terrible catastrophe that came from that, we've been protesting Saudi Arabia all over the place. And in Washington, D.C., constantly in front of their embassy. I've gotten arrested several times in front of their embassy. So we have been in their face. But luckily, I am still here, unlike many Saudis who have tried to protest the terrible abuses of their government. And let me just say that I never thought that somebody like Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, would have been rehabilitated after being responsible for the horrific death of a Washington Post journalist, and yet here he is, and both Democrats and Republicans in the United States seeing Saudi Arabia as their great ally is just one more example of the incredible hypocrisy of U.S. foreign policy.
100%. And lastly, what does global universal women's rights mean to you? What does that entail?
I think it means that we all live on this planet in equality and dignity, that one's chromosomes should not determine what opportunities one has in life, and that it's not just an issue of women and women's rights, it's an issue of women who live in poverty should not have to live not knowing if they can provide for their children, women who are living under repressive governments, like the Palestinian women, should not have to worry whether their children will be swept up and killed or arrested. So I think it's a question of being able to live without fear and to live in a world of freedom and joy, where we can express ourselves and be part of a community that is a loving, compassionate one.